Well, I mean, there's your tagline. So Tokyo Jazz Joints times Orion straight to summer. I mean, there you go, done. You're welcome. You're welcome, Orion. Just put the check in the post. Oh, I've got no notes.
You have no notes for today's episode?
No, I have got notes, but it says just says notes in book. So
in book, which book is that?
Well, you see, this is the thing, right?
Boy, we're off to a really rocking start today.
This is going to be a belter. I think it might be downstairs.
Oh my God! You know what? My notes.
Yours are...
You know what? Can we just stop recording and start from the beginning again? Should we just stop that? I'm already like 5 minutes in. This is a waste of.
Well, that's okay. We'll just keep it because I can always do something with it in the edit. Okay. So you haven't got any notes either?
No. I found it. Yeah. No. I thought it was the wrong diary, but I've got it. Because remember when I went there.
Well, I need to go. I need to just give me 1 minute. I'm going to run downstairs see if I can find mine. Okay. I think I know where it is. Hang on.
No problem.
Don't stop recording.
I'm already recording. Oh, I thought you said don't start. Okay. And just like that, Philip had to run downstairs for his diary. Knocked everything off the desk too. I'm really glad we're only doing one episode today. Stop the clock. Very bad start.
There's a joke there for anyone British who's over 40. You'll remember that show. Right. It was called Treasure Hunt. This woman used to jump out of a helicopter, but one of the catchphrases was "Stop the clock," because they used to see a flag. You had to find a flag.
More tumbleweeds, obscure British pop culture references that have no meaning to me.
Oh, I know there's people there that get that. Okay, Annika Rice, where are you now? Well, actually, still broadcasting. Right, I've got my notes. They're barely legible, but. Okay, welcome everyone to Tokyo Jazz Joints podcast, episode 87. And I'm sure it's been a long 2 weeks for many of you waiting for the big camera cliffhanger. It sounds like something Trump would say. The big camera cliffhanger, which will be revealed, and I'm sure it's been a tough 2 weeks waiting to find out what exactly happened. But James, you already know, so presumably you've had quite a good couple of weeks, have you?
Yes, I do already know, and so I've not been on the edge of my seat about the great camera caper. Edge of the seat about a lot of other things, I guess you'd say, but not that. And obviously, you know, as is always the case with our episodes, we are coming to you from an undisclosed date in the past by the time you're hearing this, but just because, you know, people were embracing our DIY banter and our weather banter, let you know that the Kanto region of Japan is officially now in summer, even though it's supposed to be rainy season. And Philip, it is sweltering already. 33 centigrade, 80% humidity. Yeah, you got out just in time to get back to nice, cool, crisp Ireland.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always one way to really never date a podcast is to give a description of the weather at the particular time that you're recording. I think it really keeps it timeless when you tell someone specifically what the weather is at this time of day. But I mean, sure,
well, it's more interesting than the update of your attic construction progress. So I would say, but people, a lot of our listeners have made it over to Japan at various times a year, and inevitably, every time I'll meet up with someone, they'll just be like, "Is it always like this?" And I'm like, "Yep. It's always like this.
It's miserable.
You need 2 to 3 t-shirts a day, and
well, no, if you're planning on going to Japan to live, and you have the requisite skills, obviously, not just that you speak English, but teaching is a good, particularly teaching in a school system, whether that's international school or otherwise. I mean, either or really, even in the Japanese system. one advantage of that is surely that you get holidays, particularly in the summer. So certainly in the latter part of my time in Japan, I tended to just get out of Dodge really as soon as the summer started, because I think once you've done that once, then it's very hard to stay there. I mean, it just is so grim.
It's crazy though, because at the same time, like, you have all of the street festivals, the omikoshi, the carrying of the shrines. Like, our local neighborhood festival is in the middle of August. And it's so there are a lot of, and of course all the music, so there are those kind of fun summer things, but it's just the in between that of riding the train to work and just being exhausted. I think Tokyo Jazz Joint super fans will remember this deep cut of you describing wearing your button-up shirt, blazer, and jacket on your way to work on your first Tokyo summer, and not realizing, like, oh my God, what's going to happen?
I'll tell you what. You don't remember it because you're clearly not a super fan, because the worst part was it wasn't even a jacket and a tie. I was literally wearing a open neck short sleeve shirt, and it was still like stuck to me like saran wrap, like cling film on a piece of meat. It was absolutely horrendous.
I forgot. I mean, I know you had traveled. I know you traveled outside Ireland, but had you ever really experienced a summer like a Tokyo summer before coming here? Or because most of your summers were still in Northern Europe, or had you been to the tropics? Did you have any idea what that would feel like physically?
Does Chicago count as the tropics?
Chicago's not close to the tropics, but it is baking out there in the summertime.
Yeah, well, I remember that, like, going to see, the first time I ever went to America was my after my second year at university. I'd moved to Glasgow, and that whole year in Glasgow, my 4 best friends were all Americans doing that JYA, junior year abroad thing. And so I went to see them that summer, and I just have that memory of like getting picked up at O'Hare Airport, and it sounds so ridiculous now, but like putting my hand out the car window and just being absolutely stunned by the fact that the air was warm. Like, I always thought of putting your head out a car window or your arm out a car window to be to cool down and a cold thing. But suddenly it was like, oh no, Chicago is warm. And that was my first experience of that sort of like humidity. But I think there's nothing, I mean, I'm sure there are worse places, but the humidity in Tokyo in particular, because so much of it is concrete, and you're sort of dodging like concrete, huge air conditioners that are like spewing all this air out into the streets. And there is that thickness, like when you step out, you have your shower, you manage to kind of dry to cool down, you put your clothes on, as soon as you step out the door it just hits you like a wave. It's not pleasant.
Yeah, it's a long day, but look, that's what the Orion stocking up in the fridge is for when you get back home, so of which I have already cracked one open, although it's due to some technical tomfoolery before this episode, I may have to get another one, but we'll keep that behind the curtain. So Philip, look, I think we have left them hanging long enough with this riveting banter. Where are we with the Great Camera Saga? We finished up in Yokohama last episode. You went home. We talked about popping into Minton House, which had the event going on. I think it was pretty early that night. It was still about 7:38. I made my way back to my house here in Yokohama. You went back into Tokyo. And the next morning, you were scheduled to go way out into Eastern Chiba to some places that I had told you about. But before then, you still had to sort out this camera issue.
Well, no, I didn't actually, because it was too early, and I actually went out to Chiba first. So there's still a touch of jeopardy, which I'll get to in a moment. But yeah, I mean, it's funny. I'm just reminding myself. So it's sort of Monday now. It's Monday, May the 5th. It's still actually Golden Week. So we were kind of juggling a few days and a few dates and times, because Golden Week, some places are open because it's a holiday, other places close and so on. But I'd managed to sort of shuffle everything around and figure out that both these two places, called Django and MJQ, were both, I mean, again, incredibly, first of all, Chiba, when you look at Chiba on the map, I mean, it's a big prefecture. It's sort of I wouldn't say famous necessarily, but famous at least in part for having hosting Narita Airport, which you'll know is one of the world's furthest away airports from the city that you're trying to go to. But also parts of it, particularly that far eastern coast, you know, when you drive up along that, it really feels like you're somewhere like not in Japan. It's very surfy, it's very laid back. But when you look at Chiba Prefecture on the map, I mean, what's really notable about it is like most of it, certainly the southern part of that peninsula, is just green. There's very little development on it. It's very rural.
Oh yeah, I mean it's way bigger than people remember. The Boso Hanto, as they call it, the Boso Peninsula, really does stretch down. And it's funny, you know, Philip, because I was checking my notes for today. So Django and MJQ are in a town called Mobara. And it says on the map it's only 65 kilometers from Tokyo. I mean, it feels like it's 600 kilometers. It feels way out there. It
feels very far away.
Yeah, I was surprised it was that close. I think it's probably because, like you said, a lot of Chiba is quite hilly and green. The train doesn't go straight, so it's 60 by distance, but by train time, I mean, it's. I think it was an hour and 30 minutes for me to get there. Because I didn't end up getting the express. But anyway, it's certainly not a suburb of Tokyo. It's its own town. And it's funny because when I was reading about it, now you were saying you went, you know, it was Golden Week. When I went there on January 2nd. And so most of Japan is, you know, still closed during the New Year's holidays, you know, but I checked and it's like, oh, Django's, you know, we're open and, you know, we're open for lunch, you know, come by. So I went all the way out there. And then on the walk from the station to Django, you go through, you know, it's hard to tell because I'm thinking, well, you know, it is New Year's, so a lot of the shops are closed, you know, so that's why the streets feel so dead. And then I realized, no, man, these shops are closed. I mean, Mobara is one of those cities that once you get away from the station area, you've just got this like endlessly long Shotengai shopping street with the old sort of Showa era shops, and half of them are just shuttered up. You know, it felt like on the way to Django, I felt that kind of familiar feeling from so many of the regional places we'd been to, where it was like, oh man, this town is sort of dying, you know, and it was kind of a bummer. Now we found out later on that part of town was dying. Mobara itself is still, you know, it's still got quite a bit of industry on the other side of town, and Philip, I don't know if you're not so into the historic research, but it's actually like a really big trading town from more than 500 years ago. And they still, in the summertime, they sort of recreate it for 1 week in the summer, where all of the, you know, the agriculture and all of the various goods and stuff will come, and they'll have like a big week-long market. And I was happy to hear that at least that sort of history is thriving. But other than that, like walking around Mobara town, just a little bit grim.
Yeah, it is interesting for me. I mean, I'm sort of really interested in that whole kind of like that sort of diminishing kind of architecture and these places that, you know, sort of kind of tell a story of a different time. And so like it was a fascinating walk for me in the sun that morning. But like you said, it felt like, you know, I mean, it's not even really a suburb of Chiba, never mind Tokyo. I mean, it's right over on that other side. And I think actually at one point, I think I did ask one of the guys, I think he said it's about, for them in Mobara, because I said, you know, what do people do out here? And he said, well, you know, as soon as the weather's nice, we all head to the beach. And I think he said it was about 20 minutes drive. So 20 minutes drive away, you've got this whole coast, which is quite developed in terms of like, I know from friends who did surfing and that kind of thing, it's quite a big surfing place. So like there is that, but you've kind of got to cross that no man's land in the middle to get to it. And I think you just forget how, you know, when you look at the map even, the southern tip of that peninsula is way down below Kamakura even. So like, you know, it's close, but again, like Japan is connected. You know, it's connected. You get the right trains. You can make a short journey of it, but it still did feel like a bit of a trek. And actually, I was reading this book this week by this legendary British comedian called Bob Mortimer. I don't know if you ever came across Vic and Bob, or Vic Reeves and Bob Mortimer, but
I did not.
Very much. I suspected as much, but anyway, they were huge, particularly when I was at school and going to university, and continue to make comedy. And actually, Bob Mortimer, he's written this autobiography, but it's funny because he talks about, like, he said in life, you know, there's two things that you can do that are kind, and you'll never be thanked for them. And the first one is, don't make any noise in the house when other people are sleeping. And the second one is always be on time. And this, I was thinking about this week when I was trying to remember the story going to Django, because you had very kindly called, and we'd done that thing where you're calling at the train station. We're on our way to somewhere else. I'd scribbled something down on a piece of paper on my phone, and whatever had happened, I think I had 11 in my head. So I'd got to Django for more or less 11. But actually, when I got there, it became clear from the sign that they weren't open to 11:30. And it was one of these many times that we've been to places, albeit I was on my own this time, where I think being there on time or being there early really worked to our benefit, right? So basically I was stood there, and as you've just explained, there's not a lot going on. So it's not like, well, I'll just pop into this nice cafe and have a coffee or whatever.
And that's the thing, because once you pass by that thriving Mobara old shopping street, I mean, it's really spaced out, but it also explains why when you actually approach, I remember feeling as I approached Django, I almost kind of like, I did a double take, because it's a big building with a beautiful, beautiful sign up. It's a big, big place. It's. Well, I wouldn't even say it's a house. I mean, it's more of it's actually a building.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, I'm not sure how you differentiate a house from a building, but I think we've had this before on previous podcasts, but we need to dig into some of these definitions. But like you say, it's one of those places that we've been to, further out, where they almost inevitably have a car park, because a lot of people are going by car, coming for lunch, whatever. And I kind of stood around. I thought, well, what will I do here? And actually I toyed with the idea of jumping in a cab and heading over to the other place first, and then it just didn't seem to make sense. So I went to the convenience store, and then I just stood awkwardly on the other side of the road. But again, just like, fortuitously, someone came out, one of the staff came out, and she was kind of mopping the entrance, the tiled bit just before the door. And she sort of looked over at me, and I kind of looked back, and then she looked again, and I kind of, acknowledged her by nodding, and then just, and again, I think this is often where Japanese comes in handy, but I just said, oh, is it 11:30 then? And then of course I just headed across the road and got chatting to her. And as soon as we got chatting, I'm doing this, and I've been to all this many places, and it's this thing. And actually we talked, my friend talked to the master, and and straight away then you're just in. So next thing she's like, oh, well, let me just go and find him. So she went inside, and she said, and then she came back out. She said, I've just called him. He's across the road. And I'll come back to being across the road in a moment whilst we talked about Django. But this was like one of these experiences. I don't know if you remember those things at school. I can't remember what they were called, but you used to like fold them into it was like a little fortune teller thing, and you put like your thumb and your forefinger in to both sides, and you kind of like opened it and closed it. You've got all
the little triangle ones with the different options. And
then you open up one, and then like there's still another one, and this was one of those experiences, because like I thought I was going to see Django, but what little did I know that there was these other things hidden in this whole story, which I was immediately called you. I was like, oh my God, you won't believe what I've just done. Anyway, so like Django. So I got chatting to her, and lo and behold, this master turned up. Like he came across the street. She said, actually, he's across the road in his audio room. And I was like, what?
I mean, right away, you're just sort of like, bing, like audio room.
I'm like, oh, that sounds promising.
Yes.
Yeah. So I stood there, waited for him. He came over, and we actually stood outside and chatted for at least 5 minutes, and there was so much in this conversation. So he basically gave me the whole lowdown straight away, which was he'd started at Jazz Kisa. He said, I didn't know that much about it, but I'd been to Jazz Kisa. I absolutely loved them. And he started this place, and he said, basically, I did it for 3 months and nobody came. So I just thought, well, you know what people love? They love pasta. So he kind of flipped the whole... Yeah, they flipped the whole place. Like, it's still a jazz place, but they flipped it into one of these kind of like pasta restaurants that are, really popular in Japan with like families, with couples. People drive there, go at the weekend, whatever.
And it's not a It's not a half measure. I mean, their online presence is at Mark Django Pasta, first of all. Okay.
Yeah.
And they emphasize that it's in Japanese they put namamen, which means it's like they're actually making from scratch.
That's right. Yeah.
So and that's it's funny, Philip. I once you told me when you got back from there, I was so jealous because the day that I had gone, I didn't get there right before they opened. I got there right before they closed for lunch. The lunchtime hours. They sort of like, I think it's 11:30 to 2 or something. So I got there at like 1:15, just in time to sort of like make a last order, and it was packed with people because it was New Year's break, So I did not, and when you walk in, I mean, as soon as you walk into Django, there's like this long entryway alongside the kitchens on the left, and you see, I mean, they've got like, I think it's his family. They might even have like an extra staff member. I mean, they're back there cooking, So it makes sense that she would have been there. They're definitely going to be there way before they open at 11:30.
Oh yeah, I mean, like when you go in, there's the counter where the kitchen is open, and then
it's
actually
a proper
you go
restaurant
into
kitchen. Yeah.
Yeah. You go into the second bit, which has this beautiful bar with some seats, and that's where the records and the hi-fi is. And then behind that, there's some tables, and then there's another, like a third bit. With tables out the back,
that's right.
You can actually come. There's a back door as well. You can come in
it's
from.
It's all wooden. It's all very like cabiny. It's really, really relaxing, but it's very much like I felt going there for lunch. By the way, the pasta was top notch, A+, fantastic. What I had,
it was very good. I had a rub.
But it felt at lunchtime. It felt very much like a restaurant. But they were playing jazz. He wasn't playing it on his on the turntable that they had behind the bar. I think they were just playing some CDs. But it was so crowded, and they were really busy. They were running around, blah 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 blah. You know what I mean? It's like winter break and stuff. But so a lot of people are going there because other places are closed, and so I didn't get a chance. I think I spoke to the missus for maybe 30 seconds, and I spoke to the master for about a minute on the way out, and then as he started to get into the jazz talk with me. I don't know if I told you this, Philip. So I explained who I was and what I was doing, right? And that at some point, my partner would be coming back here to take some pictures.
Yeah.
And he started to get really into the jazz very quickly. And almost instantaneously, his wife ran over and was just like, "Oi, get back in the kitchen. We still have to clean up and we got to get ready for the dinner time." So you could see that, like, he was kind of, it was like one of those things where it's like, "Oh, can I just talk to him for a few minutes more about the music?" So I was kind of like, "Oh, I guess I came at just like the absolute worst time to get the jazz chat in." So
yeah, well,
but I had no idea what was gonna. I had no idea that what you would experience was there because he didn't mention it.
Well, I think actually, in contrast, I must have come then at literally the best time because, at this point it was sort of maybe 11:10, 11:15. And he said to me, he started trying, I've got actually just found in my notes there was 2001, he started this smaller place, the place I referenced there. And he said no one came. So they moved to this bigger place and went down the pasta route. But he said to me, look, I think Sakamoto-san is his name, but he said to me, look, we've got like we're full reservations from 11:30. Like, so at that point, I said to him, well, look, is there any chance I could go in and take some photos? And he said, yeah, of course. So like we kind of went in, and he just sat down. They brought him a cup of coffee and some toast, and I just worked away and did my thing. Took some photos of the place as they were getting ready for the lunch service. He very kindly put on a couple of records on the actual system. So he's playing these records, sitting there having his toast. I'm sort of half talking to him, half taking the pictures. And then, one of the things that really stood out, actually, we were talking a little bit about, how there's all this interest in jazz kissa now and Japanese jazz. And this will probably... this will be quite painful for all the collectors, but it's funny because I was chatting about, Obi, and he's saying, oh yeah, Obi. I said, actually, this is one of these things now that adds value to a record. And, if you get a record on Discogs or you're buying it online or somewhere and has an Obi, people will pay more. And he was like, Obi. He's like, don't even talk to me about Obi. He's like, see when we were buying records when we were young, used to just get the Obi, used to rip it up and throw it away. He's like, we just throw it in the bin. He's like, first of all, it's a pain in the ass. Secondly, he's like, it's kind of rude to the designer, which I never really thought of. He's like, the designer's made this beautiful cover and you put this big band on it. And he's like, yeah, we just used to throw them out.
It's a great point. And we've heard that, Philip, I've heard that so many times, especially from the kind of more older gentlemen collectors at the Kisa, that they're just flabbergasted by like how much people prize a record that still has the Obi on it. Yeah, it's one of those. And look, I mean, when you look at it from the perspective of like us who we're Western guys, but who have lived in Japan, I totally see both sides of it, because for, like I would have been probably the same if before I came to Japan, like, oh my God, that makes it like so much cooler. Whereas like after being here forever, I'm just kind of like, yeah, whatever. It is kind of annoying. And it always rips, and it's just like, it's just kind of in the way,
Yeah, so, it is in the way sometimes, even just to see some of the information. Anyway, so that was kind of it. So like I'm so glad that I got there on time. I mean, God bless the Japanese train system, but like I got there at perfect time. And, had I not been there, like you said, I think it would have been a similar thing, because actually, just jumping ahead, once I came back over, because they said to me, do you want to eat as well? And I was like, yeah, actually I would love to. So I kind of put my order in, and then we went across the road. But when I came back with him to have my lunch, by that point customers were coming in, and I didn't really, there was no more chat with anyone really, other than, can I get the bill? And obviously I said my thank yous, and he was very much in the kitchen at the coalface doing the thing as well. So he wasn't just sat back, kind of, enjoying what he'd created. He was very much still working in the restaurant. And so, just beautiful timing. But anyway, so as he's having his coffee and toast, and I'm thinking, okay, well, this audio room was mentioned. So like, because originally he'd wanted to take me over there. He said, you want to come over to the audio room? And actually, it was me who said, well, look, I would love to take some pictures of the restaurant, but I knew, because she'd told me all these reservations were in, that like I needed to move quite quickly, because obviously once customers come in, you're going to be in the way and da-da-da. So I took that gamble, went in, and then I said to him, which was also a bit of a gamble, I said, oh, would it be possible to see this audio room? And he's like, yeah, sure. So, I mean, this was just like one of these moments, and I've got written here and circled on my notes, top 10. So this was a new entry straight in the top 10, because like basically we walked across the road, and there was sort of like, there was a few shops around, and then just houses just, set back off the road. And we went past this little place, and then it looked like it was kind of attached actually to a house. And then he got the key out, he opened this door, and like, he slid back the door, right? And it was just like literally like, I mean, bigger than a lot of houses in Japan, right? Or a lot of apartments that people are staying. It was just this square room with like, let's say 5 low slung chairs, like a little sofa, couple of low slung chairs, this kind of green shag rug in the middle of the room, projector screen, JBL speakers on either side as you're looking at the screen, and then all around the walls, just shelves full of records, and then this skylight, and there's a couple of musical instruments strung up different places on the wall, and this is just the room that he sits in and listens to music, and it's literally like a stone's throw from Django.
First of all, I was absolutely outraged that you got in there without me, because I didn't get to see the audio room. But I was also just like, my God, like it's just, that's one of those things where the places that are sort of outer, it reminded me of, oh God, what's the place down in Kyushu outside Nagasaki?
Paragon?
The one where the guy built it with the cabin, we had all the wood outside. Remember?
Woodside Basie?
No. In Nagasaki, outside in the outskirts of Nagasaki, when we were there, the guy that it's right next to his big house, and he built it. Remember, it had a great audio system.
Oh, Mellotone?
Mellotone, thank you. Yes,
yeah.
Mellotone. So anytime those kinds of places in the regions where they've got this sort of like separate sort of space. That used to be like a storage, like what they call in Japanese, like a kura,
Yeah.
And they turn it into like, in Melatonin, it's like a, a kisa. In Sakamoto-san's case, a Django, that's just his private audio room. I always think to myself, like, God, you see, if I had one of those, how would you ever even leave? Like, how does he even get up to go to work? I would just want to be sitting there all day long on that couch with that audio. I mean, and he had tons of records from that photo you sent me. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's literally what he does, because obviously when I turned up, she said, oh, he's across the road in his audio room. And he said to me, like, and this is sort of where the camera drama sort of re-enters the story, because actually, weirdly, that morning when I got to Django, my camera was working again, so I managed to take the photographs in Django on my camera, the one that I bought the new lens for. But frustratingly, and this is what I think drove me mad more than anything, it wasn't like the camera was just broken, like it would just randomly work and not work. As I crossed the road, something changed, and by the time I got to the listening room, I didn't have my camera. It wasn't working again, so I had to use my backup camera for this particular place, which is fine actually, because I thought, well, look, this is not actually the joint, and actually I just wanted to really enjoy the experience, and I knew it was going to be quick because he had to be back over to the restaurant. So he said to me, look, do you want to listen to something? And I was like, yeah, of course, So, I mean, and it's one of these things, like when you think back, and even at the time when you're sitting there, you're just thinking, like, how, like, is this really happening? Because this man does not know me from Adam, right? Like, we only met like 20 minutes ago, and he picked out this record called, which I didn't have, it's called Something for Lester by Ray Brown. It has Cedar Walton and Elvin Jones, and he put it on, and the two of us just sat on this sofa in absolute silence, two complete strangers who met 20 minutes previously in this private audio room space of his, and just listened to the first side of this record. And like, you're sat there thinking, I mean, it sounds amazing, it looks amazing, and you're also trying to kind of process, like, where in the world would this happen other than here?
I mean,
and like, how lucky to be able to
it's-
experience this,
Yeah, it's like the time years back when we went to when we were up going to Basie in Ichinoseki, and we had time in the morning, and we ended up just going, oh wait, what's this place called? Royce? Like, we've never heard of that. What the hell is
like
that?
that.
And then like, it's like the guy's like in basically his house behind the liquor store, and he's just like, well, okay, come on in, sit down on the sofa, and I'll play you some records on this audio system that's the same one that's at Abbey Road Studios in the UK. And you're like, wait, what? Like, and you just sit down, he makes you coffee, literally like met us for like 5 minutes, and you just entered into this world, this unbelievable like private world. I mean, there's nothing, just astounding.
And I mean, yeah, it's just incredible. I mean, the word to describe it is intimate. It's oddly intimate for something so instant. And I mean, it is, without putting too fine a point on it, it is one of these kind of incredible things about like music, how like it's just this connection between two people that just cuts through everything. It cuts through the need for formality. It cuts through the need for like time, getting to know each other, any of those things. You just have this kind of shared language, and you can just jump straight in and just be sitting in this private space with a complete stranger for 20 minutes and just relax and enjoy this music. And you just think, wow. And as soon as, as quickly as it happened, then he said, look, we should probably go back. Like, I have to go back to the restaurant. I was like, yep, 100%, of course.
Yeah.
And I thought, just what an incredible. So, he switches it off, he slides the door back, and then you think it's done. You think, well, okay, well, that incredible, can't wait to tell James. You're trying to keep it all in your head so I can sit down in the restaurant and scribble down some thoughts. And then he goes, oh, actually this place. And so in between Django and the listening room is an old Japanese house, like old wood, sliding door. And above the door, he has this big piece of kind of like planed or sanded wood, like a piece of a trunk, which you would quite often sometimes see like over the entrance of a temple, right? Mm-hmm. And written on this piece of wood in Japanese, in these beautiful sort of burned letters in black, is Django in hiragana.
I'm looking at it right now, and it's unbelievable.
And I was like, what is this? And he's like, this is like, at some point I'm going to reopen the Kisa. Like, this is the building. I'm just going to have a Kisa. And I'm like, sorry, what?
It's nuts.
And he's like, it's just a storeroom at the minute. He's like, it's just full of pasta and stuff at the minute. But he's like, at some point I'm going to clean it out.
The building reminds me of one of the many, but the most obscure groovy in Japan, which was Kyushu. Remember that he had, like, it's sort of like that.
It's that sort of feel, it could be like an inn or something.
Yeah, it's traditional Japanese architecture with the sliding door and the wood, and it's like, yet he has this sign that said groovy, and you're like, wow, okay, what's going on here? I mean, I'll keep an eye open. I follow them on Instagram, although they tend to just post their menu. But if there's any announcement, food stuff, if there's any announcement that he's reopened the little Kisa space, I'm going to get straight up on that JR KO line and head out to Mobara, because, I mean, I think it's just a unique gem as it is already. Even not having been to the audio room, I mean, just the whole thing of it being basically a pasta restaurant, but with all this great jazz and just like this nice building. But the fact that he's got that, and now that he's considering to open it up as a sort of a cafe, as a Kisa again, that's going to have to be on the radar.
Yeah, I mean, it might happen. I mean, I'm just looking again at my notes there. It says that he's free. He told me he's free in the daytime, but he's very busy today. So obviously it was a holiday, so they were particularly busy, as when you went as well. So, it may be that it happens. It could just be one of these side projects that, never quite comes to fruition. Like, you sort of think, oh, I really must do that, or I really must clear out the shed, or whatever it is. But like, I mean, the building is there, and I think it's really interesting that, he kind of, because he said, like, when I opened this Kisa, he said, I didn't really know anything about business. I just sort of thought people would come. And then he's like, the reality is you don't make a lot of money from jazz, like from jazz Kisa, so this is kind of when he went down this route. So, like, it's going to flip back, it's going to come full circle, where he's going to be like, eventually kind of made the money in the restaurant. He's got this, successful restaurant that's a going concern, and it'll maybe give him the time and the money to just be able to open that Kisa across the road in that gorgeous building. And even then, you still got this listening room next to you. I mean, just this private listening room. It was just one of those kind of wild, as you're going out, to Chiba, you're like cursing. You're like, really? Am I still, like, it's still 25 minutes away? And you're sort of cursing. I'm like,
yes.
And it was probably the second or third time I toyed. Like, I just hadn't managed to make it work on previous trips. So, and then you're walking down that rather bleak kind of shopping street that kind of dies away. And then it's just, roads with kind of convenience stores, and it's like, I mean, and then suddenly you just stumble on this, and you're like,
you feel like you could be anywhere in Japan, basically. It's got this sort of like rather sort of like economically, slow, bit of a depressing vibe coming on. I mean, how many places like that? Elvin up in Tohoku, same thing. You're walking along.
I mean, a lot of them,
shops.
right, outside the cities.
The weather is different, but basically it could be almost anywhere. And then, like you said, you turn a corner and you walk into this magical, intimate, private, and also very, very unique world. Like, that place is completely its own thing of that family, absolute gem. I remember walking back, Philip, I can't remember. I'm sure we talked about it. I mean, you mentioned we've gone on at length about this sort of old Shotengai, sort of old, closed shops and empty houses and whatnot. Did you get by the hospital at all? The abandoned hospital?
No, at that point I was just, I was sort of so overwhelmed by the whole experience, and I was also conscious of times and
that's right,
getting
because
back
MJQ,
specifically to fix my camera.
MJQ is also it's in Mobara City, but it's basically back to the station and then again on the opposite side of the station, so it's at least a half hour. Was a half hour walk for you from there?
Well, no, because what I did actually was because again, like, it's far, right? And I mean, it's still well connected, but I was kind of trying to meet a couple of people that evening. I also had to sort this damn camera thing out, so I was like, I was kind of working on the basis of getting back to Tokyo by a certain time. So I actually got them to call me a taxi, and I took a taxi directly to the next place. And I mean, again, I've said this a lot when I'm talking about these places to people, but like, not only is Django there, but like somehow in the same, more or less in the same town, on the other side of this town is another place. Like it's not just that one. There's actually two, right?
Ridiculous.
And I mean, the next place is MJQ, and I mean, sort of from the sublime to the ridiculous, really, because I took this taxi and it was out, again, reminded me a little bit of the trip to Elvin from the station, because suddenly you're just out in this kind of like very rural, like it's a lot of fields, a lot of agriculture, these big roads that they have. And MJQ is just this, I mean, it's just a little, I mean, it's got a sort of a hut kind of feel again to it, but it's basically just this one kind of house that could just as easily be a farmhouse as it is a jazz place. On this piece of land, you know, there's a sort of an unpaved little road that goes up to it. It's surrounded by grass, and you know, it's like this other incredible jazz place that's just like, and it's like, what? How? Like this lovely taxi driver.
No, it's you're even underselling it. It's really surrounded by nothing. I mean, it's like there's the nearest
there's a road, right? There's basically a road,
structure,
right?
But the nearest structure looks about 100 meters away. You know, I mean, it is very, very isolated, and you just kind of wonder, like, so you know, I mean, again, I couldn't get to MJQ because he was closed that week. But it seems to me like it's one of those places, yet another in our series of, well, you're retired. I don't want you sitting on the couch all day listening to jazz records in my living room. So please open up the, you know, if you're going to do this with your friends, make it into a business type of places. That's what I assumed it was from the pictures.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what it is. In fact, he said to me, he described it as Nenkin Seikatsu. So it's basically like retirement money life. Like that's it sounds like a hashtag. But like, yeah, like retirement money life. That's what he said. And funny enough, I had a great chat with him. So obviously I knew it was open because you'd called, and so I had this lovely female taxi driver that drove me over, older lady. She had a great chat. She said, "Oh, isn't it brilliant what you're doing? And you're really living your life, and that's very exciting. What an adventure!" And she was like so lovely.
Was she Irish?
No, that was just actually a good point. Actually, I don't think she was, but I'm pretty sure she's Japanese. But yeah, no, she dropped me off, and she was like, "Oh well, you know, good luck, and I hope it all goes well." And she gave me her card, and she was like, "If you want to, you know, if you need a taxi back anywhere, let me know." And it's funny, on the back of this card, it was advertising for new drivers, and it specifically said like over 65s welcome. So it just shows you like where Japan is headed, right? You know, these much older taxi drivers. We've got a story about one of them in a later place that we were in the car together. But like, I mean, yeah, like, you know, he's just there doing his thing. He told me that it used to be a karaoke bar, and he took it over because it was not surrounded by any neighbors. So basically he could play the music, whatever volume he wanted.
Oh, perfect.
And he's just there doing his thing. He's like, "Oh, it's mostly old guys. They're mostly over 60. They just come and like have a coffee and listen to the music." And, you know, again, I mean, this place, you go in, it's this gorgeous little, the interior is beautiful. Like it's all wooden. It's got this kind of open ceiling that we've seen in a few places where you can see like the rafters, you know, you can see these wooden beams. A lot of Coltrane stuff. And this gorgeous sound system sort of set over in one corner, and then, you know, a few tables. He's got a piano and a double bass there, and then you know, in front of you as you come in the front door, there's a kind of traditional coffee like kisaten type counter. You sit down, all the bottles, the coffee, whatever, and he just, you know, again makes you one of these kind of slow coffees. And I just sat there, and then eventually, you know, got chatting and explained what I was doing, and he said I could take some photos, and I had a little bit of a strop because my camera wasn't working, but I just pushed on and took some photos anyway. And yeah, we just had a great chat. I mean, there's a few things that stood out in my notes in particular, which I think are really kind of weird. First of all, he was probably the heaviest. We've talked before about this connection, but the heaviest Marilyn Monroe presence that I've ever seen, I think, in any of the places we've been. I think I've got here, I counted at least 4. There was at least 4 Marilyn Monroe posters up in different places. What is the connection? What is the Marilyn Monroe thing with Jazz Kisa?
I mean, I think we have talked about this, but I think it's pretty consistent because of a lot of the guys would have grown up in the 60s watching these movies, and Marilyn was just this sort of unattainable goddess, not just her being this goddess, but also this image of America, of everything that Japan coming out of the war was striving for. You know, I mean, we don't want to go too far into the history and sociology, but like, it's not a coincidence that men and women who grew up in Japan at that age, they looked to a lot of these sort of American pop culture things and wanted, they strove for it because of what they experienced with the war and all the struggles and everything that they saw in America was like sort of like this road to success, and she was sort of a symbol of that. In addition to being Marilyn, and so it's not a coincidence that guys of that generation, my father-in-law has got that. He's got the Marilyn Monroe, he's got the John Wayne fixation. He's watched all John Wayne's movies. You know what I mean? You hear this over and over again, and so
interesting.
I think it's most famously. I think we've covered it was Bird, right? Was Bird 56.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Which the famous poster that's no longer there, and the new improved Bird that allegedly had a lot of cockroaches behind it when he took it down. But anyway, I mean, there's a metaphor. But I mean, this guy, like, I mean, when I came in, as with a lot of these country places that we've been, he was kind of had the TV on, and he was listening to the news through the TV. And then he sort of, reading the newspaper, and he sort of, shuffled the paper and was like, and he started to put on some music. And he played some really nice stuff. I mean, he had a lot of Coltrane posters up and different bits of Coltrane. He had this kind of interesting painting between the speakers, like kind of shrine-like again. But he was like, oh yes, that's someone painted that. But if you notice, it's actually it was the Blue Train cover, or the photograph from the Blue Train cover, but the saxophone was different. And he was like, oh, I don't know if you noticed, but it's actually a different sax. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So he had this
that's
very
awesome. That's like like when we were down in Osaka, and he had the flipped cover of Sonny Clark's Cool Struttin', remember?
Yeah.
That's great.
So like it was very cool, I didn't have like loads of time in there, but I had probably 45, 50 minutes. We sat and chatted. I managed to get some pictures of some shape or form. But I mean, it's kind of interesting because then he sort of said, yeah, I just spend my days here. And then he started talking about, and this shows how rural it was. He said, like, actually, I got interested in rice making since I came here. So he just started talking about this. He's like, I just sit here, I listen to music, and I watch this process. He's like, it takes about 4 months. And, how the landscape changes. Wow. He's like, I see it grow, and then I see them come and harvest it. And then, like they replant it, and they do this, like, they only do this once a year, I think, because it's so labor intensive. But he said, I just enjoy sitting here and watching that kind of process. And I thought, like, well, I mean, there's definitely worse ways you could spend your retirement.
No, man,
right?
It's amazing. He's completely zenning out. Remember we talked last episode about our friend at Bar Antibody, who talked about, it's good to keep a simple life, and I mean, look, your man at MJQ, he's playing the jazz, he's drinking his coffee, and he's growing his rice, and that sounds amazing.
Well, no, technically he's not growing it, just to be clear. He's watching other people grow it. He's not gone that far because the man is retired, in fairness. So he's watching the people who are growing the rice. Now, they may give him some, I don't know. But he just sort of sits there and watches this kind of... And there's something very Japanese, very cyclical, very seasonal about that, just as the seasons pass. And he's just sat there and he put on some Coltrane, which predictably, you'll never guess what album he put on. Not Blue Train.
Ballads.
What's the other go-to? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which I like. Okay, it's still ballads, right? So beautiful to hear. But sometimes I'm just longing for them to put on like Crescent or like Transition,
I'm ready to put
or like
on Kusamama or something. Yeah,
just something else, right? But it tends to be ballad. And then he put on a few other tracks. One that really stuck out, just in that space, sitting there like in silence with his man again, was he played Autumn Nocturne by Sonny Rollins. It just sounded so beautiful on that system, and I was like,
oh yeah,
this is great. And then we had this kind of got to this point where I was like, and we've done it so many times, the old sort of, so I started making these kind of noises about the train, and he was like, oh, well, when's the train? I said, oh, well, it's, at whatever time. And I said, look, would you be able to call me a taxi? And then there's a bit of a Yeah. Well, I don't know if the one will come. And then I had the card, and I said, "Well, look, this lady was lovely. You know, she'll come." And then there was a sort of that pause, and I thought, I know what's coming here. And of course, he was like, "I'll just take you to the station." So once again, another Tokyo Jazz Joints lift, which was great. So he just, again, shut up shop for 10 minutes, flipped the sign over, and he dropped me down the road. And of course, like in a car out there where there's no traffic, it's very quick, right? I mean, to walk, it would have taken you like an hour, right? But like, it's like a 10-minute ride to the station, you know, and he dropped me off one of these stations where there's no guards, there's no ticket gates. You just kind of get on and pay at the other end or whatever. But yeah, I mean, that was my experience with these two joints in Chiba, and I was really delighted. Not least because they were fantastic experiences, the camera situation notwithstanding, but also because I really had them on my list for like a while, like when I've been out on these previous trips. And I know you'd been to Django, but I think something about just when I looked them up, I thought, you know, they seemed, particularly Django, they kind of fell into that category of like, yeah, I mean, like it's kind of interesting, but like, is it worth it? And I know you'd said, oh, you have to go to Django, but it was only when I got there and I thought, God, you know, had I known what these were actually like, I would have definitely, you know, gotten out sooner.
It was well, that was the thing. I mean, we thought we had been pretty comprehensive, and we knew we hadn't been to every joint in the Kanto area. I mean, that's a challenge, you know. It's a massive physical space, but we'd been to so many. But I think that far, like we were saying with you know, the Boso Peninsula, Chiba, that far out, it almost feels like you're not even in like Tokyo Metro Kanto area anymore. You feel like you're in the countryside. So I just kind of thought it was somewhere like down our list. Maybe the photos didn't do it justice as well. You know, we kind of like, okay, we'll get there. Maybe we'll rent a car one weekend, you know, combine it with going down the coast or whatever. It wasn't a priority. And then once you get out there, you realize like, oh, these are two of the coolest spots that, you know, added to the list, the endless list of amazing spots that we've been to.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, so that was Chiba. And yeah, I came back through Inage, was toyed with the idea of stopping off at the wonderful Candy, but I was on a schedule, and the reason I was trying to get back was, of course, to try and get to the camera shop. So yeah, I just thought at this point, I was like, look, this cannot go on. So I had decided to take definitive action, which I did. And I have to say, I'm really glad I did, because this was, of course, I think this was only the second full day. The first day, obviously, we had met, but I had just arrived that morning. So this is only my second full day. And like, there was another sort of 15, 16 days sort of yawning ahead of me. So I thought, like, I have to get this sorted. So I headed over to Nakano, and I'd kind of checked out a few camera shops that do like trade-ins and things like that. So I went to Fujiya Camera in Nakano, and shout out to the absolutely awesome Kamikita-san, who would say 110% is not and will never be listening to this podcast, but he still deserves the credit, because he was the loveliest guy. And so I just went in, and again, it's one of those times where you think, thank God, like I speak Japanese, because I just went in, I said, okay, this is an emergency. I really need you to help me. Here's what I'm doing. Here's what this is. Here's what's happened with my camera. And I explained the whole situation to him, and I said, look, do you do trade-in? He was like, yep. And I literally emptied like my camera bag out. So I had these older lenses that weren't digital, and I was like, will you take this? Will you take this? Will you take this? They even took the body that was broken, that subsequently I realized, you know, was not working. And they traded all that stuff in, and I managed to purchase a new body for the camera, the exact same body, brand new. Now, it still cost me all in. It cost me about £1,000 probably all in, but I had a camera that worked. And actually, just from doing the trade-in, the price, I brought the price down by about 80% from what the original price was. And it was just one of those things where once you've done it, you don't think about the money or anything. You're just like, I have a camera. Like, I don't have to worry. It's done. Exactly what I thought 2 days ago in Yokohama, until I realized it wasn't the lens, it was the body. But it was just such a... you know, one of those moments like where, you know, those moments when you're traveling of like triumph and achievement, where you've like achieved something, like you've got through a situation, you've overcome an obstacle. And like, albeit it was only a broken camera, but in the context of what I was doing and why I was there, it was obviously a massive thing. So I was like, So relieved, and Fujiya Camera like really saved my bacon. So I'm so grateful to them. And if there's ever a second volume of the Tokyo Jazz Joints book, old Kamikita-san will be getting a thank you whether he ever sees it or not, because it just
that's sweet.
he just saved. He say, and he's just doing his job. He's just doing his job. And I said to him at the end, I said,
like you'd said, listen, it could have gone very different directions. Maybe they couldn't find a problem. They couldn't have helped you. They didn't have the parts, whatever. It could have taken much time. And the fact that like you could get it sorted just in those couple of days, continue on the trip, not have to worry about it. And I'll send out a thank you as well, because it meant that I didn't have to hear about it anymore either on the rest of our trip. So that was
very good.
That was also a good bonus. Yes.
Well, I would say something really horrible back to you, but you did go and get me that bottle of Coke in the depths of the Bic / Yodobashi camera drama the 2 days previously, the day before.
215 yen, just to show a little kindness. Yes.
It was actually the day before. It wasn't even 2 days. I said that earlier. It was 2 days before.
It's so funny though, Phil, because looking back,
before.
I mean, we've got a big itinerary of podcasts to record, a lot of places to talk about, but it feels like we've already done and seen so much. And it's 3 days. It's Saturday, Sunday, Monday.
Well, that's the wild thing, right?
Like you've only been there for 3 days, and we've already talked about these amazing. We took a Crescent and Silencio. We went down to to Yokohama, up to Chiba, the camera stuff. It's just like this trip was full on.
Yeah, I actually, I just jumping back, I meant to say if people who are listening, and I remember we talked about the Modern Jazz Quartet. When we talked about Mellotone, actually, because I remember both of us were listening to those enormous JBL speakers, and we're like, now I get it. When you could hear like every note of the vibes, you're like,
oh yeah.
This is why you have these speakers. But I asked him about the MJQ, and because of course your mind immediately goes to Modern Jazz Quartet. But he told you what? Of course you didn't get in. But basically he said no, it's nothing to do with the Modern Jazz Quartet. And I thought, well, it's an interesting choice for a name, because like that's
especially
what everyone who's into jazz will.
No,
it's actually Mobara Jazz. Mobara Jazz Q is what it stands for.
Q.
Yeah, just Q. So I guess Q is the name of the place, but it's Mobara Jazz Q, so it's MJQ.
There's one other mystery, and I'm assuming because you said he's an older gentleman, but if you look at his website, which is pretty simple, but it's fine. It's got all the info you need. But if you hit on gallery, it just is 5 or 6 pictures of sort of kids' drawings of what looks like a whale. Or
do you know what?
A couple of whales and a couple of fish, and I'm assuming that would be one of his grandchildren, I guess.
Well, do you know what? They were displayed. They were in the counter. They were at the counter.
Oh, really? Oh, that is
yeah, they were, because I was like, oh, that's cute. So there you go. That's
so sweet, because it doesn't say anything. So usually when you click on these things that say gallery, it's pictures of the joint, right? And here, I opened it, and I was like, the hell are these? What is a fish? Like, what is that? And so it's like 6 of them, clearly done by a child. And okay, so that's definitely his grand. That's really cute. That's so sweet.
So yeah, anyway, that was the day, and actually I finished it off just as a little footnote in a place that I've got only 2 things written about, which a lot of people will know, because it's quite it has quite an online presence, and it's in Shimokitazawa, which is where I was staying at this particular section of the trip. But under my notes, I've just got my nemesis. And I've got "It's not me, it's you?" ? Written. Can you guess where I'm talking about?
It's my nemesis, and it's not me, it's you.
And I don't think we ever covered this. I decided not to cover this, I think, in previous episodes. The place I'm talking about is Hayashi. And the reason I've got nemesis is because I don't know if you remember, and I'm pretty sure we never talked about this on the podcast, but on a previous trip, I had tried to pop into Hayashi, which is in Shimokitazawa, not far from Masako, and I know that the owners are friendly, but I had a very weird experience where it was reasonably late at night. Now, the sign was outside, and it said it was still open, but when I got to the door, I sort of opened it, and someone rushed over, and I kind of said, "Oh, are you open?" She said, "No." I said, "Oh, but the sign says," and basically the owner just closed the door on my face. And I remember being absolutely furious. I was absolutely furious, And I came downstairs and I thought, right, okay. And I had sort of resolved myself. I thought, well, that's not a nice experience, so I'll not go back to Hayashi. But I just then thought, you know what? Look, it's here. I also thought I had never been to it either. And I just thought maybe it was just a perfect storm of like it had been a long night. Maybe there was misunderstanding. I mean, I was speaking Japanese as well. It wasn't like I was sort of, just being like, but you're open, or whatever. But it was just a very strange experience. And I mean, funny enough, when I went in, I thought, what on earth was that all about? Because the owner was there, a younger woman, similar to Moeko-san in Masako, very lovely, very friendly. And Hayashi is in itself a very odd little place in the sense that it's kind of like a little, almost like sort of twee, kind of like English tea room feel to it. But then she plays this really kind of like way out, like avant-garde stuff.
It's a weird. What's the word?
Dichotomy.
Thank you. It's. I was about to say something very different. No, it's a really weird dichotomy because it was the first time when I went there, I had the exact same thought because it was sort of like there were a bunch of people there eating like little cake sets with the tea.
Yeah.
It's very much cat centric because there's like pictures of cat, the website's a cat. There's no evidence of like the music until you look behind the counter when you see the albums, and then all of a sudden, some very aggressive jazz comes on. And I was like, wow, okay, so we're all right. That's cool. I'm up for it. I'm ready. And it didn't seem like the customers were, well, they certainly weren't put out. Nobody got up to leave. But I also didn't get the feeling that the customers there were coming for the aggressive jazz either. It seemed like they were there for the kind of tea time, cake set type of thing, Well,
I got there about, it was about, I think it was about 10 o'clock. And there was this woman came in next to me with her daughter, and they had like a full dinner. Like they were like, can we still get? And they had like a full meal, and I sat there in front of the speakers. And then eventually the owner came over, and I got chatting to her. And again, it sort of just the whole thing left me with this thing again of like, this is why I this sort of nemesis thing. I mean, it's a bit of a joke, but I was like still really confused by the end of it, because then I got chatting and I said, I don't know if you've come across this Tokyo Jazz Joints. And I think she kind of said, oh, yeah, I actually think and then she said, would I have seen that in like Disc Union? And I was like, oh, yes, that's the book. And yeah, and
she would have seen it. She would have seen it because she is pals with Moiko from Moscow. She's part of like that sort of Moscow sort of like, crew. You know what I mean? Of people who are sort of affiliated.
Because I asked her that.
She certainly would have been known about the book. Yeah.
Yeah, and she sort of confirmed that. She said, oh, yes, well, we're actually friends. And I said, oh, right, okay, well, actually, I really wanted to photograph Hayashi. And then again, it got into this weird territory where it was like being back in Japan like 20 years ago, you're trying to figure out what's going on. Because I was like, I said, I'd love to take some photographs. And then I stupidly, for some reason, tried to fill this sort of space by talking about the camera being broken. So then she kind of said, yeah, you can take... Well, she said, oh, okay, well then, take photos whenever it suits both of us. And I was like, okay, so then I couldn't figure out, does she mean, was it a Japanese no? Or was it that she heard, oh, your camera's broken, so you can't do it now? And so I left again, still thinking, oh my God, this place is like really, really messing with my head.
More language language and cultural confusion, even after all these years, it never stops.
Yeah, I mean, genuinely, I was like, I don't know what this means. And there was no one else there. And so I sort of sat on, I kind of hoped, but then at this point I thought, look, maybe this is sort of a don't take photos. So anyway, I gave her a couple of stickers, and then she made this whole thing about like putting up the sticker by the door where all these stickers were. And I was like, I don't understand, why are you messing with my head? Anyway, I didn't take any photographs in the end in Hayashi, but it was one of those beautiful moments where I think it was getting to about it was about 20 to 11 actually, and or around like quarter to 11, and I in my head I was thinking, I'm always conscious of that, so I was like, I'm probably just going to head here, I think. And then actually, funny enough, she came over and she said, actually, we don't have any other customers, and would it be okay if we closed a little early? And I think that the next day they were closed anyway, which is why I'd gone kind of late that evening. And I said, oh yeah, absolutely, of course, like, sorry, I didn't mean to overstay. And she said, oh no, it's fine and all. So it all ended in this very like lovely, sort of friendly, warm way. And I just like walked down the steps and I was like, oh my God, stop playing with my emotions, Hayashi. But anyway, so no photos of Hayashi, but interesting experience and some great tunes in amongst all the kind of napkins and doilies. And
we never figured out about that time when, because I remember we talked after you had that experience when she was, kind of basically shut the door in your face and you were extremely salty. And I mean, my only guess would be that, we've talked a lot about Shimokitazawa, how popular of a neighborhood it is, especially for overseas tourists. And we know that sometimes overseas tourists, maybe by accident, they just don't necessarily know like the protocol, the culture, or whatever, could cause a little bit of a ruckus. Maybe she had some bad experience and so saw you, didn't even hear you speak Japanese and just shut the door on you. That's the only reason I can think of that, because it's just not the kind of thing that happens in Japan at all. That just does not happen usually. So still a bit of a mystery for sure.
Yeah, I figured the same. I think sometimes, I mean, she's a younger woman, so it's a little confusing, honestly. But I also, like we've all experienced that thing where, your mouth is speaking Japanese, but your face is just giving off American. so that's all that seems to get through.
I love how it has to be American. Yes.
Well, I mean, let's face it.
I know
foreign equals American, right? So
I
don't know. Who knows?
Days, yes.
Next time I'm back, I'll probably have another try, just purely because if nothing else, I'm a bit of a masochist. So. Anyway, look, that was probably a bit of a longer episode than we imagined, considering it was only the two joints, and even taking out the 20 minutes of absolute drivel at the start, 10 of which was you realizing was recorded before you realized that you hadn't put your microphone on. But sure, we'll make something of it.
And then you climbing the steps to go get your notes.
That's fair. Fair.
And me disparaging your TV choices, your recent TV choices.
I think it's the first time I've ever recorded on all three floors of the house a podcast. So that's a first for the podcast as we crawl towards 100 episodes. But look, as always, brilliant to chat about these places, and we've got some absolute belters coming up in the next episode in a couple of weeks' time. So in the meantime, keep that aircon on, drink Orion, and look after yourself. And remember, don't make any noise when people are in the house sleeping.
Listen. Could you just repeat that to my family, please? Because there's certainly a few members of this household who could benefit from that advice. Let me tell you, I'm the papa. I go to bed early. I wake up at 6, and now we've got summer break here, so there's certainly certainly a lack of consideration for other sleeping hours in this household. But look, hey, to be fair, the other day I didn't even hear the three of them come home. I was pumping some loud music, okay, in the living room, the second floor. And they just walked up the steps. Just like, Dad, what the hell is this? I was like, oops, sorry. Because I need to,
Amazing.
That's look, those moments are few and far between. So I was pumping out some Nigerian juju music. And what are you going to do? Talk to you soon, my buddy.
All right, take it easy.
Ciao. Bye-bye.